Hi, I'm Angeline. I just wanted to take a couple of quick minutes to do a little thought experiment with you because it's something that I've kind of been puzzling over in my head, and I thought it's of some value and maybe, it's good food for thought, so I thought I would share it with you. Part of the reason, the reason that I'm interested in cultural anthropology is because I'm interested in the softer side of history. I mean, the material culture is pretty easy to study. You can see the pots, you can see the village sites, you can see where people did what, but I'm more interested in the question of what it felt like to be there doing those things. And in my mind, those questions, we can come kind of close to approximating an understanding of those things from prehistoric times through understanding the symbols as they relate to ceremony, as they relate to, and just generally understanding the weather, understanding migration, understanding how language moved across the land and how ideas moved with that language and how maybe the language is affected by different ideas. The introduction of crops, for example, like corn, changed some of the language that was used. So anyway, these kind of things. So sorry, I know I have a very complicated dress on right now. Anyway, because of this is my interest, I feel like it's important to study world philosophy, because I am of the belief that people in remote prehistory traveled around the globe much more than traditional archaeology has hitherto felt bold enough to claim. It's starting to look like there's ancient civilization or evidence of ancient civilization along the coast of Baja California. There's starting to look like DNA links, like really ancient DNA links between Australia and South America. These kind of things. I'm not going to get too much into that, but the point is, so I'm interested in the philosophical systems of the world and how they all kind of relate to each other across the continents. And one thing that they seem to all have in common, mostly anyway, is the archetypes of certain ideas that are just kind of common to being human. It's just something that kind of comes in our DNA from being human. It seems to show up all over the world, and so I really love tarot cards. I've always been really fascinated with tarot cards, and lately I've been studying them sort of intensely, and this divination system. And the major arcana of the tarot cards, they take you through a philosophical journey of a human life, from birth through sort of all the material things that you experience about the world, and then through all of the spiritual things you experience about the world. And that got me thinking about using the first 10 of the major arcana of the tarot cards to kind of describe the phases of prehistory in the Southwest as it relates to society. So that's what I'm going to do here with these cards. I'm going to take you through this really quick and see what you think about these ideas. People evolve according to certain archetypical milestones, and also societies evolve according to certain archetypical milestones. Now, one thing I want to address in this little short discussion is ancient prehistory. I say probably things that show up before the year, 10,000 BC, because it seems like there have been, even the Mayans and the Aztecs both talk about us being in the fifth world, the fourth or fifth world, I guess, depending on the group you're talking to, but in the fifth world. And that means that there were several world destructions before that. And it sort of takes you way back in time into, it's just a realm that I am not qualified to talk about as it relates to the Southwest, okay? But I think that we get these really ancient religious systems that were decimated by world catastrophes over and over again. And now we're in this new phase. So all I'm talking about is this new phase from, say, like 10,000 BC on. Anyway, here we go. All right, so we have the number 0. I'm not even going to address this yet because the number 0 is part of every number in a sense. It's at every stage. This new beginning is at every stage. But I'm going to treat number 0 as that in-between place between the beginning of something and the end of something. It's like starting over. So I'm going to treat this as 0 as an end number instead of a start number, but that would be the fool. All right, so here we have phase 1 of the Southwest. We have people. We have people who are wandering the landscape. This is the magician, the number 1. People who wandering the landscape and they're disorganized. They're living something like animals on the land, pure survival. Then they come to a realization, the high priestess, the number 2, and you can take sacred geometry or numerology into this kind of discussion as well. It's relevant in the numbers of these cards. These are just the archetypical numbers and cards and ideas of creation. So the number 2 is the high priestess. People who are basically living like animals on the land develop a spiritual relationship with the land. They start to invest meaning into natural forces. And then they start to realize at number 3, the Empress, who is, she's a creator. This is where we start to see horticulture. People have evolved from just merely existing on the land to putting meaning into the land. And once they have meaning in the land, they start to kind of realize that they have a part in creation, in making the landscape different than it is, or, you know, manifesting something out of their will. They're not merely at the whims of nature, but they have some hand in it. So you get horticulture, and then you get shamanism, and you get people who are using spiritual forces to hopefully be instrumental in organizing their environment. They're starting to plant small gardens. They're starting to see that they can influence how the crops grow. They don't just have to show up at a certain time and hope for the best. Okay, so then we get to the number 4, the Emperor. The Emperor is stability. It's controlling the environment, just managing an empire. This I see as agriculture. Agriculture comes because now we realize we've been through horticulture. We know that we can have some effect on the land. Plus we have some crops that we know we can reliably grow, and we can settle down in one place. We can feed ourselves, and we can start to organize. We can have stability. We have some free time. And that means that this free time brings about sort of a leap in consciousness, in the sense that now we have to think about how we're going to organize all these people, and we start to think about how we're going to make sense of this new world. And that brings us to the next card. Okay, the next card then would be the 5, the Hierophant. The Hierophant is the introduction of religion. Okay, so we're running an empire, and this empire needs to be organized, and we have to sort of get the people all organized on the same page. And so there start to become rules, and there start to become systems and hierarchies, and organized religion. So it's no longer this kind of shamanic people with the plants relationship, but it starts to become people with the people relationship. Religion or spirituality becomes less about, it starts to turn from being less about nature and more about humanity. So this 5 is actually the number 5 actually is kind of an instability card. It's an instability number. At 4, things are stable. At 5, you're starting to feel that things are rocky, so you have to do something. This is almost like a move of desperation, this introduction of religion and hierarchy to keep things under wraps. Now, what I think is interesting about this 5 is the reverse of it, is this idea that you don't need all of this to deal with nature. People had been doing it for always, without organized religion or organized, like, not politics, but that's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I'll keep it going. Okay, so, because the keys to everything, a baby is born with it. It's just, it comes with being human. We've always known how to do it. We don't need this guy to tell us how to do it. We can just do it. But, you know, this is a symbol, an ancient symbol of fertility. Anyway, we can just do it, but we choose not to. We choose to look to him for the answers instead of to look to nature and to ourselves for the answers. Okay, so this is a big shift in society when we start to get organized cities and hierarchies. So once we have these organized cities and hierarchies and everybody is, they have their place in society, again, we have some more stability because now we have systems in place. So people can follow their passions. We have even more, I don't know if we necessarily have more free physical time, probably because there's less migration, but there's also more mental space to have desires because now all of the survival is sustainable. It's guaranteed almost, and so now we can start thinking about what we want, what we wish for. You know, you start thinking about love, you start thinking about creativity, maybe the arts blossom. Okay, that's the Lovers. That's number 6, stability. Now, with all this stability, then we get to the 7. The 7 is sort of it's a burst forward. It's another instability. It's another. This is the Chariot, by the way. Another instability. It's also it's an urge to change things up, to get out of there. Because now we've been sitting here. We've been in this system. Maybe we're not liking our rulers. Maybe we're thinking that the religion that's imposed on us or the rules that are in our society are not fulfilling. You know, we have had some time to think about ourselves now and realize that this isn't feeling quite right. We might want to join a different band. We might want to migrate. Maybe some cities split up. Maybe some people leave the bigger cities and move into, you know, being hunter-gatherers again. Smaller bands split off. It's movement. It's out. It's kind of striking off on your own again. I want to say, like, think about this in the sense that this becomes Chaco Canyon. Okay, huge society in which, if you wanted to be a poor person in the society, you were going to have to do a lot more work than you did if you were living as a hunter-gatherer, in a sense, because not only do you have to you have some responsibility for your own survival in daily life, but you are also forced to work. You have to build roads, you have to build temples, you have to work the fields. There's probably a scarcity of food as the Hierophant, the people higher up, start to take the resources or trade them away, and then they keep the wealth, but they you know, the people, they show it in the teeth of the people, the poorer people. There was a lot of malnutrition, a lack of diversity of food. And so people start to think, I think that I am not the person for this. I need to move on. So then you get the destruction of something like the destruction of Chaco Canyon, for example, or these, you know, big shifts that we see where these pueblos are abandoned and people move away, and, you know, the changes, people moving on, more migrations. Maybe the weather affects it anyway. People have to move. It's a change. Okay, because of this change, suddenly you are put in the face of people who you're not familiar with, maybe different tribes, maybe different religions. You have to move to a different environment that you're not so familiar with, and since the landscape is populated, maybe you have to learn some ways to get along with people, or maybe you have to have war. Well, then this is 8. This is a stability, comes from inner strength, learning new languages. Maybe if you're moving around the land, you have to have inner strength. You have to have a fortitude. Hold on one second. Are you leaving?
I am. Are you going to get Dominic?
Yeah, I'm going in a second. I'll hurry up. I'm almost done. He'll be okay.
Have fun.
Okay, thanks. All right. So 8. Yes, inner strength. Inner strength to amalgamate into new societies. All right. And I like the reverse of this card too, because you have to have inner strength even in the face of extra scary things. extra scary things might be people who want to chase you out, but you have nowhere to go, so you have to fight for land. Okay, and then so then we have we start to, I think, basically we have an interruption, okay, because one of the interruptions of the strength is the arrival of the Europeans, right? This would be the arrival of the Europeans. Here we've figured out a way to manage ourselves on the land once again, with the advent of huge societies and a lot of structure and tremendous population, you know, and then the Europeans come, okay? So here we have Native Americans having to use their inner strength in the face of almost an impossible rival. And now that created a whole shift of its own that was inorganic, I think. And now we have the Native Americans looking within themselves. There's a lot of privacy and secrecy around ceremony, around sacred knowledge. Only insiders can know things. Insulation, being insular, but not losing yourself, being strong within, but being a hermit. This is the hermit. This is the 9. This is the hermit. Okay, going within the groups, staying tight, not sharing important things with people who might take them away from you. And then the 10, the completion, the Wheel of Fortune. Now, this isn't, I don't think that we've gone through this phase. I think this is kind of an interesting card in the discussion, I guess, the idea of these archetypical phases being part of the history of the prehistoric and now historic Southwest. And that, I guess, the Wheel of Fortune means that this is kind of a card of karma and fate. So the wheel, I guess you can say the Wheel of Fortune is turning. We got a lot of power now. The Native communities now have a lot more power to wield than they used to. They can take a stand at places like Bears Ears, for example. There's negotiations happening. Court battles are being won in the favor of Native Americans about repatriation and this kind of thing. So the karmic wheel is turning. And then I'm not going to talk about these cards, but that was the first 10. That was the first cycle of completion, and it has to do with physical life or material life. And then the rest of the cards, numbers 11 through 21, these are all to do with spirituality and the spiritual journey that comes from being at this phase of evolution of society, and then because you are stable in this phase of evolution and you've actually been able to progress through it, now you can level up into merely focusing on the spiritual. Now, here is where I actually think that some of the ancient civilizations did manage to progress through these spiritual stages as a society. And just to take it out of the Southwest for a second, you look at the cities of, I think it's India anyway, the cities, they're basically superpowers that people can achieve through meditation. And these aren't like mumbo jumbo. These actually have been now cataloged and studied scientifically in controlled environments where people have the ability to slow their metabolism down so they don't have to eat ever for like a year or something, or people can become invisible through this kind of ability to influence the power around them where people just simply don't see them. It's not like they dematerialize, but the people cannot focus to see them. Teleporting from, like, dematerializing and basically teleporting through material substances, like being able to control the atoms of your body to materially pass through something else that seems solid. There's a really famous myth about this from South America. Basically, there was a battle, and this high priest ruler was running from the people who were coming. He ran up to the temple, and he passed right through the portal in this stone temple wall. this is the story the people tell. And I think they're not describing something fantastical. I think they're describing the cities, these powers that you can, through just a lifetime of practice and meditation and enlightenment, your physicality can manipulate basically your own atomic structure and the material and the world around you, the energy fields around you. You know, and it's not so crazy because all native tribes talk about these shamanic powers, like being able to throw, like have the shamans having like contests even where one will throw power at the other one and knock him down. You know, the native cultures, even in recent prehistory, talk about people being able to do this. And that's by investing in their spirituality and their enlightenment to the point where they can manipulate physical reality using the human body. So anyway, I think that is something that ancient prehistoric people had the luxury of expanding on, that we haven't in this world, in this phase of humanity, haven't attained yet. Hold on, there's one thing I forgot to talk about, and that's the Fool. The Fool. After all of these phases, after all of the completions, once you have all the destruction, you have to have a new beginning. This is coming fresh. This is fresh on the landscape. People, again, coming out of whatever devastation that has come upon humanity in that region, or in the Americas in general, or in the world. Again, humanity has to start fresh, and that's this. The Fool is that fresh person coming back out into the light from the caves or from the floods or wherever they were off Noah's Ark. You know, anytime that there has been a mass destruction and humanity has to begin again, the Fool is that first person. And then we go back and we start it all over again. We got the person who's surviving, then the person has enlightenment, or spirituality has ideas of, you know, progressing. Humanity then starts to realize they can do horticulture, manipulate the earth in some way, and then they get stability and they develop agriculture, and then they have bigger societies, so they need rules, and then they realize with all these rules there's a lot of stability, so they can think about their own selves, navel gazing a little bit, falling in love with their own ideas and each other. But then they realize that because they've done that, I want some autonomy, so they move on and they migrate. Then they have to have inner strength because migration is hard and you have to encounter new people, and so you have to deal with all the things that might prevent you from thriving, European contact, okay, stuff like that. And then having to go within and isolate because of unsafety, or because there's too much population and groups have to become insular. Even a little bit of xenophobia might be in this card, so that things can shake down and karmically turn, and things will get shaken up again, and you have to accept reality for what it is and go within to progress as humans and become more spiritual, because the material world has been experienced and you can't just keep going through that cycle of material over and over again. You have to take it to the spiritual plane, or there's just no more evolution. You're just no better than animals, basically. Animals that can think and destroy themselves and think and destroy themselves over and over and over again, unless you get up into the spiritual, and then that's when you can start turning your own wheel of fortune. So, all right, okay, that's it. So that's all I'm gonna say. I gotta go pick my son up from band practice. I don't know, I hope you found this interesting. I'd like it if you would maybe leave some comments on this and tell me your thoughts. But there it is. All right, have a great day. Mwah.